But your thoughts on what the Bible did to us early on and religion did to us early on when we were on the enslavement plantation. Any thoughts on that? Enslaved. I didn't say slave. We ain't slaves, we kings and queens. Absolutely. What's your take on that?
Well, everybody wants to talk about everything concerning slavery except the Bible.
Ooh.
We want to deconstruct this and deconstruct that and get over this and get over that and heal from this and heal from that. But nobody wants to heal from the religion that was literally forced down our throats brutally. We had no choice but to serve the God of the master. You know, yes, we, because we are part of our ancestral DNA, used to celebrate two-spirited people. And so colonialism, whiteness, went around the world and said, you're savages, and the way that you're living is inhumane, and you're going to serve God like how we serve God. Now, this has nothing to do with the validity of Jesus Christ.
Okay.
This has nothing to do with the validity of the Son of God. But how we got to the story and message of the Son of God is absolutely important. People don't know about the Council of Nicaea, where literal white men decided what went in the Bible. Do you know women wrote books? But yet we don't know their story. And women tell the best stories. So how come we don't know what women say about Jesus? And what women have written about the life of Christ? Because men decided what would go in this Bible.
And you know, the first thing that tells me there's something wrong with our traditional Christian religion is the fact that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and all three of them are male.
Absolutely.
Why is there not a female deity? If any religion that doesn't have a female deity, there's something missing.
The first thing I tell people is to figure out who God is for you. If God is an entity based on someone else's experience and journey, then you are worshiping somebody else's God. Who is the divine to you? There's no way God is done telling God's story. And God is actually a word that just came about. God wasn't even used thousands of years ago. And man has put us into boxes and said you ought to worship this way, when African spirituality says God and the divine is a part of everything, not just for a Sunday service.
Do you use the Bible?
Yes, I use the Bible.
Why?
I use the Bible because of it is the source of Jesus' story for me. And just like with any book and any information you get from mankind, you have to determine what you will accept and what you won't accept, right? Because when people talk about homosexuality in the Bible and it condemns this, first of all, I'll take them down a history lesson. Homosexuality didn't get entered into the Bible until 1946. There was another council of white men when they were developing the Revised Standard Version of the Bible who changed words like masturbator, pervert into homosexual.
So why use a book that you clearly, based on what you've just described, has questionable inception roots, has questionable translation roots, revision roots? Why build a ministry on something that has been used in such an, I know it's been used in some positive ways, but the narrative you just laid out, I go, how do you reconcile that?
Because God's intention compared to man's action does not determine how I receive something. God intended for the story of love to be shared in many different forms, whether it's Allah, Jesus Christ, Buddha. I just choose to follow the story of love that is in the Bible and reject anything that is counter to love. You know, in the Bible, if your child had acted up, you could stone them to death. That is counter to love. In the Bible, they found a woman who was caught in the act and wanted to stone her. Jesus said, he without sin cast the first stone. People stick to that. I stick to, well, if she was caught in the act, was she caught in the act by herself? How come they didn't bring the man out? So I reject that.
But do you teach? Because at this point, it's sort of like having a book, and I'll just take it to sort of theology and the idea of the study of religion. And so if you're teaching this to others, how do you use a tool that in its entirety you don't agree with and still use it to teach? Because then now it becomes what was my frustration, because the Bible, like many, the Bible is the only book that I know where people don't read it from beginning to end.
point.
They go to church and they pick sections and then they have people recite and stand up, sit down, do all this other kind of stuff. But no one has, well, I shouldn't say no one. Most people who are followers have not actually started that book from the beginning to the end. And as we know, just from Little Red Riding Hood, if you just pulled out that part when the wolf was in grandma's clothes and you start there, you don't know why the wolf was in grandma's clothes. But if I do a whole sermon around why is the wolf in granny's clothes, I can make up whatever I want to say around why the wolf was in granny's clothes. And that's what happens. People pull out segments that are comfortable to them, leave out the part that's uncomfortable to them, and then create a whole learned moment around it. And it sounds a little bit like that's what you're alluding to, and I want to just clarify because again, if you're using a tool that in its entirety can't be effective, but you have to decide, then how does that affect your teaching?
Well, one,
And that's coming from a preacher's child.
I stand on this principle. Jesus said, love God. The act Jesus was the greatest command of all. Jesus said, love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And you can hang every other law on those two things. That's the only thing I live by. I'm not telling you what to wear. I'm not telling you who to sleep with. I'm not telling you what to drink. I'm not telling you what to smoke. That's none of my business. People have made governing other people's behavior their business. That's not God's business. God is not intrusive in that way.